Good morning. Happy last Saturday of April to you. Mother's Day's coming up, so all you guys and gals out there that need to pay attention, take care of business, better get organized. We have a week or two left. It's getting close. It's getting close. So I may have to look it up and give you the exact date, you all out there, because you know the bumper sticker of "Mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy" out there at all. So we're out here recording this show. It's a new show. We've been having some technical problems for a couple weeks, so I know some of you have been texting me and complaining, and we're sorry. It was out of our control, but we have hope that if you're listening to this, we made it. So we're out here on Friday night recording for Saturday, the 28th of April. So if you're listening and you just heard that, and it's the 28th, then we're good to go, right? Just hang, and we'll see if we can make it through 3 hours. So that means you can call in, but it'll go to recording at 742-5555 with a 530 area code. 742-5555 if you want to say attaboy or ain't so happy. Either way is good, but we won't be able to talk to you, okay? So that's that. There's a couple ways that you can listen to us. As we always mention, you can go to kmycradio.com and listen to the show streamed and at a higher quality than if you're out there at the fringe of our broadcast area where the signal gets a little feeble. Then you can listen loud and clear at kmycradio.com. Or if you're listening and your spouse says you need to fix the toilet or something and it throws you all off and you can't listen and turn a screw at the same time, then you can go to One Eye Blind Media, 4 separate words with a space, One Eye Blind Media on YouTube, and within a few hours, well actually by Saturday, it will already be up there. It's somewhat edited. Some of the clips have been taken out. Because of copyright infringement with YouTube. They're careful about that over there, so that's fine. But at least you'll get to hear the basics of the show. So One Eye Blind Media, and that's at the courtesy of Chris Starkey in Sutter County. He helps us get that up there. So hope you enjoy the show. And let's see, I think that's about it. The first part of it here today is brought to you by the Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots. And I will talk a bit about their upcoming red-hot debates, town halls. They have one regarding the superintendent of schools. The first one's going to be the superintendent of schools for Sutter County, and there are 3 candidates for that office. There's also going to be the Yuba County superintendent of school, but there's really no competition. He's unopposed, Francisco or Frank Reveles. I don't know whether he'll be there that night or not. They have him listed as being there. So you have 3 candidates for Sutter County, 1 candidate for Yuba County. Then the next time, that'll be the first Monday of May. Then the third Monday of May, you're going to hear from the district attorneys from Sutter County. And that will be Amanda Hopper and Chris Carlos will be competing for that office. Both of those positions are very, very important positions. The Sutter County Superintendent of Schools and the Yuba County Superintendent of Schools are the only elected education officials in the county. You think, well, who cares, as opposed to hiring them? Well, one thing is, if you are a citizen in either county or any of the counties that are listening, you have a superintendent of schools who is elected. And the nice thing about that is if you're not happy with the superintendent of the unified school districts or the other school districts that are hired by a board, you can always go to the elected official, the superintendent of the entire county, and address your grievances there. So it's a real important position. I know somewhat about it because I sat on the board of the Yuba County Superintendent of Schools for many years under Rick Teagarden, and he taught me a lot about what that meant. And I I didn't know anything going in, and I knew quite a bit going out. So, and I know that the superintendent of schools of the county can address gaps in what people perceived as gaps in the education system or services provided their young people. They could start charter schools. They can do all kinds of things. They can just do whatever they want because they are elected and they answer to the people. So Sutter Butte's Tea Party Patriots, they meet at Church of Glad Tidings at 1179 Eager Road in Yuba City. That's Sutter County. It's right at the corner of Highway 99 and Eager Road. So they start at, they open the doors at 6 in Building 200, and they get started at 6:30. It should be really great, and they do some live streaming on Facebook. So I think the first Monday is May 7th. And the third Monday is the 21st. So the first one is going to be the superintendent of schools, and the third Monday, the 21st, will be the district attorney. So I'm sure out there in Nevada County, Colusa County, Butte County, Placer, Sacramento County, you got some action. And I just encourage you, even those conservative folks that have become discouraged, probably the most impact you can make is to vote for your local folks, because it just takes a few votes to get somebody in office. Some of these elections just have maybe 1,000 votes in a little district. So if you really put some energy into it, you can actually change who's representing your area, whether it's a supervisorial district or coming in November, we'll have some city council races. Or if you have a superintendent of schools, you can really make some big change. So don't give up. We may not feel like we can have a big change with, say, the Senate race with the United States Senate. It's because Californians up and down the state will all vote for that one position. I still vote. I do my diligence to vote who I think will best represent my interests. I don't always win. It's not like picking a horse race. But I try to do the right thing, because a lot of people that have lived before us in these United States of America gave their life for the opportunity we have to change the way things are. They either gave their life in the major wars, World War I, World War II, or the many other types of wars we've had, whether it's been in Iraq or Afghanistan or the Gulf War or Vietnam or Korea or whatever. So maybe you should not be so focused on yourself, but be focused on those that laid their lives down, gave our lives for us, or even those in law enforcement. I look at law enforcement the same way. They're really keeping the peace of the homeland, and those in that work securing our borders from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security, all those folks that keep people that want to do weird things here in America. They want to mess it up. So we are out here on what we call Mount Huth in East Linda. If this is the first time you've ever listened to us, you wonder, what in the world are those guys doing? We're out here in East Linda. That's Yuba County. We're hoping one day that it's a part of the state of Jefferson, because we don't feel that the state of California represents us any longer, and we don't really feel that they're interested in representing us. They just want to rule over us, which was very contrary to the Constitution of the United States. Most people, when I got, I was elected, I guess I could say I was elected, I ran unopposed a number of times to the school board. And every time that I became a school board member, each time I had to redo every 4 years, they made me take an oath to defend the Constitution. I think most people just say those words, like the Pledge of Allegiance, and they don't really intend on having to defend the Constitution. And then lots of stuff or decisions are made that are contrary to the Constitution, and they just ignore it, right? So interesting how that goes. Well, there is so many interesting things going on. I had a conversation about, right before I came out here, a lady I've known for years. In fact, I went to high school with her, and we were talking, and I don't know how we got on it. We're talking about people not willing to stand up for what's right. And I know a lot of reasons. There's good reasons why people don't do that. And one reason is they think they're going to lose business. Like if businesses stand up, they're thinking people that don't like my stand won't come and shop here. And I need to earn money because I need my kid to go to school. I need to pay my mortgage. I need to pay the utilities. Right? We got expenses. And then you think, well, I'm not going to stand up because my kid's in the school that I'm going to stand up and speak about, and my kid's in the school, and he's going to get discriminated against. He's going to get harassed. He's going to get bullied, right? We were talking about how it was difficult for many of the girls and then women and mothers. It was difficult for them to stand up after they were molested by physical education teacher Jim Whitaker and also the supervisor of the 4th District, Jim Whitaker. They found it difficult to stand up because they didn't really feel that anybody would do anything about it, and they were right. And so their worst fears came upon them. In other words, in spite of the fact that there's mandated reporting at schools, that it's a violation of the law if you're a mandated reporter and somebody tells you that something happened. You don't have to see it, you don't have to prove it, you just are mandated by law to report it. And when you don't report it, you can go to jail and you can fine. And actually, I had a retired principal tell me that you could lose your job, your ability to teach. So what happened at Yuba City High School was there's been a 20-some years of ignoring young people claiming they had been molested by a teacher, right? And not only that, but the Yuba City Police Department didn't do anything. So when people say, I'm not going to come forward, like I've had women that have told me they've been raped and they were assaulted and they never went forward. And they said, I didn't think anybody would believe me, and I didn't think they would really do anything about it. So I didn't do anything about it. I just went on and just kind of buried that molestation or buried whatever went on. And the fact is, when you look at it, there's reason to believe that, because that's essentially what's been happening in our own little community here of Yuba, Sutter counties. And so we were talking about that just a few minutes ago before I came out to the station, and this lady said her grandson was at Marysville High School, and his teacher kept driveling on about Hillary Clinton. I guess this was during the election, and just kept talking about Hillary. So finally he took a piece of paper and wrote across it Trump and just held it up in the classroom, and she threw him out of class. Now, I found that interesting because my feeling is if a teacher is going to politicize the classroom and is going to take a stand one way or the other on candidates and then throw people out of class who get fired up about the opposition, maybe they should keep their mouth shut in the first place. So I got a kick out of this lady down here in Fresno State, Randa, R-A-N-D-A, Jarrar, or Harar, Jarrar. I watched her. Have you watched her, Wiki? Did you watch that woman? Yeah, she is kind of a sad-looking state of affairs. She's really overweight. Actually, she could be a pretty lady if she wasn't so overweight. I don't know why she's wanting to eat that much, but she's kind of an odd-looking lady. And but who cares if she's she's an English professor at Fresno State. So you know how expensive it is to go to school. And so people pay to go to her classes, right? And she's ranting and dropping the F-bomb and talking about sucking a guy's C, and in the classroom, and F Trump, do this, do that. And just, I thought, for an English professor, she ought to clean up her mouth, right? I mean, even no matter what her politics are, just clean up her mouth. I just thought, what are we actually at the end of the day? So we're taught to hate Trump, and he's a racist, or that Mrs. Bush, who just died, raised a bunch of racists, I don't know what that has to do with English literature or English or learning how to write or read or something. So she was interested in Trump dying and all those kind of things. Now, there was another teacher that a high school student recorded somewhere in California. Can't remember the city now. And he went on a rant against the military. You remember that? The guy that went on the rant against the military and talked about how our military are actually low intelligent folks. They're when you look at the DNA, they're kind of the bottom feeders DNA-wise of the species, and they all end up in the military. And this young guy who wanted to go in the Marines, I'm so proud of these high school students. I don't know whether I would have had the cojones to do that. I hope to think I would, but we didn't have teachers like that when I was in school. They just didn't do that. In fact, they were respectful of candidates and the government. And so that teacher got fired for disrespecting and slandering the military. But we have one case after another on our college campuses. But I tried to get a hold of the family of this young man at Marysville High School who held up a piece of paper that just put Trump on it, just to let her know who she's talking to, that not everybody in the classroom is just going to lay down and let her run over with a Hillary tractor, run over them. And so this school system, what we have in America today, is not a fair school system, is not a pro-America school system. It's a school system that are holding kids hostage and are preaching a dogma to hate America, to hate normal heterosexual relationships, to believe in evolution versus that the world was created by God, and Jesus came to save people from their sin. That's mocked. Abstinence is mocked. They would rather just teach people how to throw on a condom. It is just an absolute mess. Now, the latest thing is I talked some last week, but it never made it to the radio station. It made it onto YouTube. But I talked last week how the attorney for Orange County Office of Education, which is similar to Yuba County Office of Education or Sutter County Office of Education, so the trustees in the same board that I would have served on up here, the trustees asked their attorney for the school district to explain these new laws that have been passed by the legislature on teaching sex to kids, and to teach about gender and transgender and all those new genders. Do people have to attend those classes? And so he said that people don't have to they can pull their children out of the classes where, say, Planned Parenthood comes in and teaches them about how to have sex without having intercourse and getting into all kinds of funky stuff, right? If they want to teach that at home instead of having it taught in school, they can pull their kids out. But all these new courses on educating kids, it's called propaganda, telling kids that transgender behavior, bisexual, homosexual, lesbian is all normal. Those classes, you do not have a right to remove your children from school, and they're mandated by the government of California that they got to sit in there for that baloney. You got that? That's what that's what the attorney told the board of Orange County. Now, what he then said, this is amazing, and actually, I wrote this in an article in the Territorial Dispatch earlier this week. You can look at it on territorialdispatch.biz. You can look at it online. And I think the title was Perverted Government Schools. It's on the front of the newspaper. Anyway, he said that it's amazing. The attorney said, however, that even though the kids have to come to school and have to sit under these lies, the parents at home they're going to allow, the government's going to allow the parents at home to tell their kids that they don't agree with the school. Now, I want you to just think through this a minute, because our founding fathers fought a war with England and created a constitution that says that our rights do not come from the government. Our rights come from God, and that the government has no right to tell us what our rights are. So now we have the attorney of Orange County giving the parents permission to tell their kids about sexual stuff at home. Totally ridiculous. The best thing people can do is just, when those teachings begin, is just have their kids walk out of the classroom and just say, I want to go to the principal's office and call my mama. All right, are we ready to take a break, or are we too early? Are we all right? We're going to take a break, and we're going to be back for 2.5 more hours.
Creative Light Theater's Radio City Presents Job is a dinner theater coming May 20th through 25th. It's 1939, and radio is America's premier source of entertainment. Rodney Havershak hosts a nightly show retelling historic events, dramatized for the listener's imagination. Actors from all over Hollywood are invited to showcase their talents in retelling these stories. Harry Flowers, an Oscar-winning leading man, has been hired to play Job. His own fairy tale life seems to unravel before our very eyes as life imitates art in this hour-long recap of what happened to Job. With music and zany sound effects, this tragedy can't help but tickle the funny bone of our studio audience. Don't miss Radio City Presents Job at the beautiful Embassy Theater located at Highway 99 and Eager Road in Yuba City. Tickets are $22 each, or $200 for a table of 10. Call the Church of Glad Tidings for tickets and more information. 671-3160.
Check out the Territorial Dispatch. The paper is a weekly and can be obtained free at distribution or by mail through subscription. It's the only locally owned and operated newspaper in the region. The paper is the rest of the story. And also check out the E-Territorial. It's an online version of the Territorial Dispatch, which features local news and events for the Yuba Sutter, Colusa, and Nevada County areas. You'll also find daily and breaking news updates, current traffic, and weather information, along with a calendar of local events. Visit the E-Territorial at eterritorial.com.
All right. Lou Benninger here. This is Live with Lou. I'm here with the Wiki Man Santos Vigil and Mike. He's sitting right behind him sometimes over there in case he goes down under the power. Mike can jump up there and get some hands on the steering wheel of this thing. So we've been talking about education, and my young teen friend who got fed up with his teacher driveling on mindlessly about Hillary Clinton instead of teaching the topic of the day, and she was so biased, he held up a little piece of paper and just put Trump on it, didn't say a thing, and she threw him out of class. I would have taken him out and said, see you later, hope to never meet you again, and just move on. So this last week, California State Assembly Bill 2756 was coming before a committee hearing to try to shut down homeschoolers. Now, I want to just ask you right now, why should the California State Assembly or the government be against parents who want to school their kids at home? Is it because they are incompetent that kids at home schools are always performing at such a low ape-like level, more like primates? Or is it because the unions in the state of California, the teachers' unions, are so insecure and perform so disparagingly, poorly, horribly, that they can't stand the competition? So why wouldn't they just let anybody do what they wanted to do, as long as if you want to make a law that your kid has to go to school somewhere, a private school, a public school, or homeschool, why would people care? So AB 2756, that's Assembly Bill 2756, originally sought to require fire inspections of all homeschooling families. I want you to think about that. Do you think they are really concerned about a home burning down around a kid that stays home from school that day? Let me just put this to you. We are dealing with a 20-year person, 20-some year person at Yuba City Unified that's been molesting girls, and nobody did jack about it, and we're worried about fire inspections at homeschooling families? We have a guy at Miramontes Elementary School in the LA area that molested elementary school kids. I can't even remember how many. It's an astronomical number. Mark Berndt is his name, Berndt. He's now in prison. And the school system paid him off. He used to ejaculate onto a spoon and cover the kids, put a bandana around the kids' eyes and give the sperm to the kids in his classroom and have them guess what they were tasting. There were a number of guys in Miramontes school system that were molesting kids. It was an epidemic. Went on for over 2 decades. And now these perverts in Sacramento, AB 2756, are concerned about fire inspections of families that are having their kids study and do their education at home. It reminds me of the abortion lobby that for a nonprofit group to have a pro-life pregnancy resource center, or what we used to call a crisis pregnancy center, for them to have a center now and to even have a sonogram there, they now have to comply with actually running as if they were running a medical clinic and have to put on special air conditioning. And the whole point is not safety of women. The whole point is to try to make it so financially egregious to have a center that is donating their time and giving free services to women that people will give up and not do it. It's totally disingenuous. It's a fraud. It's a lie. It's a game. It's criminal. And it's the same thing they're doing with homeschool families. Not surprisingly, with these fire inspections, who would do all these fire inspections of all these homeschools going to all these houses? Firefighters actually objected to the new job requirement. They have a difficult time even doing inspections on businesses. In fact, every time that when I worked for the Church of Glad Tidings in Sutter County, I always welcomed and looked forward to Live Oak Fire Department coming down and walking through our many buildings, because I was always nervous about people doing something stupid like running a cord under a carpet or running a cord around under a doorway and around a door jamb and just overloading a power strip and catching the whole place on fire. I loved the fire department coming in and doing inspections, but they're limited on how many buildings they can do. So firefighters actually objected to the new job requirement. So the bill was then amended. Then the bill sought to, they wanted to know the names and addresses of every homeschool families. Why does the state government, like a communist totalitarian government, have to have the name and addresses of every homeschool family? What right do they have? It's our business how we want to live our lives. The state does not have the right to know what you're getting, what kind of coffee you're drinking in the morning, and whether your kid's going to a home school or a private school or a public school or a government school. Currently, this is amazing, that private schools have to, with 6 or more students, have to provide names and addresses of all their students to the government. Did you know that? This bill was put together by a guy named Jose Medina. I don't know whether he's a part of La Raza and the rest of these nutcases down there or not. It says after hours of hearing from concerned families, the people were down there said there may have been literally thousands of people that not only filled the chambers, but the hallways and all the way around the building that they were having these hearings in. Medina made a last-ditch plea for the bill by invoking something about James Madison. I thought, you know something, he doesn't even know how to spell James Madison. Eventually, members of the committee began to leave without voting. And finally, there wasn't a quorum. They didn't want to, these spineless legislators didn't have the backbone to vote for or against, so they just disappeared, and they didn't have a quorum, so they couldn't vote on it. These are the type of weasels. These are like bottom feeders. These are bottom feeders down there. And thank God for guys like Brad Dacus with the Pacific Justice Institute. He's been fighting for people's rights. He says, he said, we were honored to stand with the folks throughout this entire process. Brad Dacus says, you know, all isn't lost in California. We need to stand together. I would agree with Brad. I think there's tons of people, I don't care what political flavor they are, but people, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, they have the right, and they should have the right to educate their kids however they want to. Our education system in California sucks. It's horrible. What is it, 47th out of 50 or 48 out of 50? It's horrible. It isn't going to get any better as long as the unions are controlling it, and the unions are going to control it because that's who's funding these politicians to get into power. That's who's, guys like Jim Whitaker, he's appealing to a 3-person, for instance, a guy's accused from as far back as 1998 right up to the present time, 2018, numbers of women from 14 to 34 probably years of age. And so the school system dismisses him. He has a right, according to the unions in the school system in the state of California, union controlled, to a 3-person panel, a judge that's picked for these type of services, paid for, all by union, and a couple of his peers, right? No parents involved. No people representing victims. So probably Mr. Whitaker, even though these women have all come forward, will get his job back. He may not be able to teach physical education, but he's going to get his job. Do you think that's a good system? Now, Mark Burnt down in Miramontes Elementary School, they actually filed criminal cases against him, and they got a plea and put him in prison. So he'll finish his adult life in prison if they allow him to stay alive. At this point, no criminal charges have ever been lodged against Jim Whitaker by either Sutter County Sheriff's Department or the Yuba City Police Department. That should give you a moment of pause. Just hold that thought right there. So, homeschooling, pretty interesting. The government is looking at an opportunity to shut it down at any chance it gets. Now, last week I told about this, and I wrote about this in the Territorial Dispatch, about this ad that the union is running right now, and it's saying profits versus kids. It's a socialist ad. If you don't understand what socialism is, you'll probably miss this. It says kids, children, or profits. It's as if we're not spending $1 bajillion a year to undereducate kids. And so if you're a private business and you educate kids and you do a wonderful job of it, and the business actually makes a living and makes a profit, then you're evil. Remember, socialism, nobody makes any money. And y'all suffer equally. So I notice these businesses around town, they're special, they're education businesses, and they're there for kids who aren't learning in the education system. So they're tutoring companies, and you pay them. And so I guess that's evil. If anybody steps in and does a better job than the public education system, then you're evil. So if a corporation steps into Harlem or East LA or any of the poverty areas and starts stealing kids, as the union would say, stealing those kids who are failing, and the kids start to succeed, and the school actually not only puts out graduates and educates kids, but it actually makes a profit, then that's evil. So in this ad, it talks about corporate charter schools funded by people like the Koch brothers. But you can leave them out of it. They're conservative, or they're libertarians, and they're wealthy. There's lots of wealthy people in the country, and they're not all. One of the big charter school operators in New York City happens to be a Democrat lady. I've actually played some of her clips on the air here, and she is hated by the union. The union will hate equally. It doesn't matter what flavor you are, what political flavor you are. If you go against the union cannot stand competition. And my suggestion in the article is, if we don't want competition in schools, why don't we eliminate competition in everywhere else in life? Like, for instance, why don't we just have one type of taco? Like right now, we have all kinds of tacos. We got Jimbo's. We got Taco Bell. We got Cinco de Mayo in Olivehurst. We got all kinds of Mexican restaurants, all kinds of styles of Mexican restaurants, all kinds of tacos. Why don't we just say there's just going to be a government taco? It's going to have a certain amount of cheese, certain amount of this and that. Because people all get all up in arms. I don't like that. I don't like that restaurant. I'm going to go over to this restaurant. Well, what if you couldn't? When the first time I went to China, there was just one type of clothing. It was a uniform. It was called a Mao uniform. They wore pants, men and women, pants and a jacket, a Mao jacket, and a little hat. Everybody had them. Everybody looked the same. Sure simplifies everything, doesn't it? No competition. Like, just have one deal, right? Let's just have one type of taco. Let's call it the American taco. And we could have one style of dress. Let's just eliminate competition everywhere. How do you think we got all these wonderful things? I got this phone setting aside me. It's a Samsung phone, and there's iPhones, and I have friends that have these iPhones, and all this competition that brought us this phone here. What kind of phone do you think we'd have as a government phone? I think we'd still have the one that's where you have to pull it off the wall and there's a cord stuck to it, right? And so the unions are totally afraid of competition. It's interesting. We got right now the NBA playoffs. I like to watch the playoffs. Why do we have playoffs? Why don't we just have one team and they just scrimmage with each other? No competition, right? We don't want to have a Golden State Warriors and a Cleveland Cavaliers. We just want to have a Golden State Warriors, and we'll just have Golden State Warriors play each other. Have 5 people play 5 people. No competition. No best. Everybody gets a prize. Or we could have NBA with 50 teams and everybody just plays for a while and then they end their season. Nobody really wins. They just get out and scrimmage all the time. Honestly, people, why do we go? I have friends who are, like I said, that the union is more afraid of vouchers than a venereal disease. I have friends who are smart people, and they have a flat spot on the brain when I talk about vouchers. My God, we can't trust parents. with funding for the schools. We trust parents to feed their kids every day. Some feed their kids better than others. But we don't even trust parents to choose the best school for their kid. It's interesting to me that a black guy who's in the White House, at least he was half black or half white, however you want to say it. He shut down charter schools in the black neighborhoods of Washington, D.C. because he didn't want, he wanted to just please the union. Black people were getting crappy schools. Then he goes out and lectures black people about how they need to have dads and they need to have this and they need to have that. Why don't we just give them good schools and everybody will do really well? It's fascinating. I just saw the guy that, I think his name's Johnson, that runs the Black Entertainment Network, BET, and he was being interviewed on a business show on television, and he was telling how thrilled he was that it's the lowest unemployment rate for black people since they ever kept track. It's been over 50 years. And the gap between black unemployment and white unemployment shrank way down. But the fact is, forget all the statistics, lots of black folks that weren't working for whatever reason. You can give credit to Trump, give credit to who, I don't care really. To me, I'm just thrilled that people are out earning money, putting some money in their pocket, able to buy food they want, feed their kids, take care of their kids, buy a car, take their lady out to eat, buy her a dress, right? Or the lady take care of her, whatever. It's like, hey, isn't there anything positive you can find out? And so Johnson was saying how thrilled he was that people, I thought, well, there is a smart, honest, real guy, whether he's black, half black, a quarter black, 3/4 black, whatever black, mocha, I don't care what he is. He's just a genuine, nice guy who's interested in people, right? Instead of more money in his pocket. And my last comment on school, I get a kick out of all these professional athletes, right? They win the championship, whether it's football, baseball, whatever. And then they got an axe to grind with Donald Trump, so they're not going to go to the White House, right? And just it's just a congratulations ceremony, right? That's all I think it is. I thought, hey, you don't want to go, screw you people. Stay in your own city. It's somebody was just trying to show you some honor and respect. So I loved it when I saw on YouTube that the Alabama football players, they won the college championship this year, and they went to the White House. And when they got there, the Crimson Tide, right? And when they went there, a number of the students asked the president if they could pray for him. Did you see that? Did you see that? I love that. Instead of thinking about themselves, which all these other professionals and all these people thought, hey, well, I don't like his stand on that, so I'm not going, right? Just a bunch of babies. Instead of thinking about the nation, instead of thinking about, hey, if the president does well, if maybe we should pray for the president. The Bible says to pray for the president, right? I always had a hard time of that under Obama. I always wanted to sock that guy in the mouth, right? Had a hard time with that. But the Bible says you ought to pray for the leadership. It doesn't say pray for the leadership that you agree with. You should be praying for them, right? So I thought the Alabama people, I was so proud of them. And I thought, what a classy thing to do. Here's what it said. There was a short article. This is Nick Saban, Alabama football, right? He wins he's a big, he's a very successful football coach. So it says, after Trump finished praising Alabama for their incredible comeback victory over Georgia in the national championship, punter J.K. Scott pulled the president aside. Can you just see this? This is a college-age kid. I can't even imagine doing this. Of course, I was out of my mind at that age. Punter J.K. Scott pulled the president aside and asked if he could pray for the president and his staff. What a classy guy. I hope the guy, if he wants to play professional, I hope the guy's good enough to make it. I don't even know whether he's graduated yet. So a handful of Scott's teammates then circled around Donald Trump and bowed their heads, and they prayed together. I just thought, how refreshing. People have actually got a brain to work with. Well, I also want to mention another organization, and I told both of them, Sutter Butte Tea Party and Elite Security. I apologize to them for botching, because we couldn't promote them these last 2 weeks. They help us financially stay on the air out here. So I told you let's see. I told the people who got this on YouTube, I was looking at the Elite Universal Security website, .com, eliteuniversalsecurity.com. If you go there and you want a job, they're hiring all kinds of people. It said current openings. It said hiring at all locations in the Chico area, in Redding, in Yuba City, in Marysville. They want part-time officers in all areas. They want an armed officer in Chico. They want full-time patrol officers in Chico. They got jobs, and you can go get one. So, Universal Security. And so they're located right here in Yuba County, and 530-749-0280. And also, I just realized this recently. I was looking at their website they have a school that they'll train you on how to do this work. And even they can help you with your concealed weapons permit. And so, I just realized if you go to API-academy.com, you can do some online courses. Maybe you're too busy and you're working full-time, you have kids at home. There's some courses that you can just pay them and do the courses right online. Pretty cool, huh? API-academy.com. Or you can just watch the courses and you can take them right here in Yuba County. And you can take them at your leisure. It's not like out at Yuba College where there are just certain courses available each semester, and maybe your course isn't coming up right now, so you have to wait for it. Well, it might be offered right here at API Academy or Elite Universal Security right here in Yuba County, and you can get those classes out of the way, and they meet all the same standards that law enforcement would meet, whether it's pepper spray, guard card training, handcuff training, taser training, de-escalation of force training. All kinds of good stuff. So check it out, Elite Universal Security. Or if you get tired of waiting for the police, just call Elite Universal Security. They'll take care of business. In fact, I had to get in the courthouse today, and they had to clear me to get in. We'll be right back for 2 more hours. Welcome back. You just listened to a discussion about the legislation that is working its way through California Assembly, actually passed over there. And people said, oh, it won't ever pass. It did. And it's a consumer rights bill, and it's very deceptive. And it's put together by, I believe, 7 assembly members that are homosexuals. And they have couched this language in a consumer protection practice bill. It's one of those deals where you're not smart enough to pick and choose what's good for you or bad for you, so the government has to protect you, be your parent. So it says the following unfair methods of competition and unfair or deceptive acts or practices undertaken by any person in a transaction intended to result or that results in the sale or lease of goods and services to any consumer are unlawful. Does that sound anything about sexuality? Not really. It's hidden in there. I'm going to get to it. Second, a book, along with other written materials like pamphlets or workbooks, fits within the very, very broad definition of a good. So it goes on to say tangible chattels bought or leased for use primarily for personal, family, or household purposes, including certificates or coupons exchanged for these goods. And it just sounds like a consumer deal, right? So basically it says if you can buy it or move it, in other words, it's not real estate, then it's a good. Moreover, under the statute, services can include services furnished in connection with the sale or repair of goods. Booksellers provide services. To this point, California, up to this point, this statute just sounds like a standard consumer rights or consumer goods statute. So, but here's where the act gets weird. If you scroll down to the last or the end of a list of dozens of prohibited acts, all of a sudden you get into prohibitions. And you'll come to paragraph 28, which bans, quote, advertising, offering to engage in or engaging in sexual orientation change efforts with an individual. So, if an individual has a sexual problem or their deviant sexual problem, and you offer counseling for that, whether you're a pastor or a private counselor or just an individual, you can be arrested for trying to talk someone out of their sexual ways. So it says here, sexual orientation change efforts are in the same category as consumer fraud. So in other words, if a pastor or a counselor or a good Samaritan wants to help a person through a difficult time in their life and they're confused sexually, you can get arrested for consumer fraud. So, according to the bill, it means any practice that seeks to change an individual's sexual orientation. In other words, if a person is transsexual, you cannot talk to them about changing their behavior. If your child is confused, a little child is confused about their sexual orientation, they're doing things that are odd and you need to parent them, you cannot do that under this bill. This bill includes efforts to change behaviors or gender expressions or to eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings towards individuals of the same sex. In other words, if you mess with anybody that of any age that has those kind of desires, you're in trouble with the state of California with this bill. So this bill is far broader than the traditional definition of so-called reparative therapy, the effort to change a person's romantic feelings towards people of the same sex. It now includes efforts to change mere behavior. In other words, if, for example, a sexually active gay man or gay woman sought counseling, not to change their orientation, but rather to become celibate, that means not to have sex, then the services and goods provided in that effort would violate this statute. If parents faced a child who was identifying a person as a person of the opposite sex, then services and goods making the argument that, for example, they should persist in calling their daughter she and withhold life-altering hormone treatment in part because most children exhibiting symptoms of gender dysphoria desist would violate this statute. In other words, you can't parent your own kids. And in terms of like my work, which was for 20-some years involved in church, we were always working on changing people's behavior, trying to get them from killing one another, beating one another up, stealing from one another, raping one another, doing stupid stuff, any crazy behavior. We were trying to change that, including homosexual behavior. And so what they're saying here is that's against the law. This law hasn't passed through the Senate yet. This bill hasn't passed the Senate yet. So if, for instance, you have a Christian bookstore and you're selling a book that would suggest to you that you may have certain issues in your life because you have the wrong type of sexual persuasion, or you have demonic problems, or any kind of book on changing your behavior would be out of bounds, right? Churches, pastors that speak about what the Bible teaches about sex, they could say anything. I mean, we just had, I think it was Louisiana who passed this last month an actual law against having sex with animals. I mean, I think it's in the realm, you think, oh, Lou, you're way out of line. I don't think so. it's in the realm of possibility that sex with animals would be okayed in the state of California, because you got those kind of people running this state right now. So they can make up whatever rules they want to make up, because now we have government telling you every move you can make. And now they want to tell churches what they can say and not say to their congregation. Now, it's interesting because I've been involved in Bible smuggling and underground work in China for years. And recently, the borders have almost been locked up in China. And they're checking everybody for contraband coming in the country. That wasn't that way 15 years ago or 20 years ago, because we used to move right through the borders. Now they're checking everybody one by one for contraband, and they're in the Three Self Church, which is the government-permitted church. The government tells the speakers or the pastors what they can say. Children are not allowed in the church. They're not allowed to convert people. It's really not a church. And so that's what's going on in the state of California. It is unbelievable if you've lived very long to see what's coming to pass and the government dominance in our lives. So I don't know whether you have been following throughout the United States, there's a move by the liberals, the Democrats, to basically say that all sexual behavior is okay. From sex with kids to sex with the same gender and ultimately sex with animals. Now, not all of them are saying it all at once, but for instance, Mike Pompeo, who recently was approved to be the head of the CIA, when Donald Trump, the president, removed the Secretary of State, Tillerson, he nominated Pompeo to move from the CIA to become Secretary of State. And so that job, you can't just move over there without an approval by the Senate. So now they're having hearings. And if you were a senator, what would you ask a prospective appointment to be Secretary of State? I want you to just think of that for a second, because Cory Booker, who he almost drools. He wants to be president so bad. Cory Booker is now the senator representing the area around New Jersey, or one of the senators from the state of New Jersey. And Cory Booker, in interviewing Mike Pompeo, knowing that Pompeo is a Christian, instead of asking him about his knowledge of diplomacy or history or geography or geopolitical influences, he asked him whether he believed that homosexuality was wrong. That's what he focused on and made a big deal about it, because one of the things that the previous Secretary of State has done under Obama was to try to force countries, if they wanted our aid, is to change their laws to accept all kinds of deviant sexual behavior. Did you know that? You missed that. That's okay. But that's what was happening. In other words, they went from country to country saying, hey, we don't like your stance on transsexuals or homosexuals or whatever. And I'm going to talk about sex with kids in a minute, because you might think, oh, Lou, you're just going off the deep end. Well, actually, if you're a Californian listening to this, we're going to be honoring all kinds of sexual predators in just a little bit. So anyway, Booker made a big thing about harassing Pompeo about his spiritual beliefs, right? So, it's one thing to believe that homosexuality is wrong. It's another thing to treat fellow human beings, whatever their beliefs are, unkindly. I think Mike Pompeo, his view would be you're supposed to love everybody, care for everybody, help everybody. In fact, it's the American military that stops a lot of the Muslims from throwing homosexuals off buildings and slicing the heads off of homosexuals. We actually protect the rights of those folks. So Pompeo then gets hammered by Cory Booker regarding homosexuality. So now we have liberals in California who they have to always push the envelope and be out ahead of everybody in the United States on whatever we want to talk about, whether it's gasoline or have the highest prices for energy or gasoline, or try to convince everybody that the earth is burning up. And so now we have a situation where they're going to try to force people that you cannot follow the Bible. Ultimately, it's you cannot follow the Bible or any kind of Christian biblical view if it contradicts the view of the government. Now, this isn't new, because all you have to do is you can read about Daniel in the Bible, and if you don't worship the secular government, we're going to throw you in the lion's den, right? We've been through that before. We've been through it generation after generation after generation, right? They put the Jews in the concentration camps, the Holocaust, right? Because they didn't believe right. They didn't follow right. They're like a lower form of humanity. So here we go with this situation, and now we have coming, like this week, I don't know whether they enforced it or not, was the Day of Silence week. In fact, today was the Day of Silence week, where our day, this whole week you could have honored it anywhere, called the Day of Silence, where students could come and protest about the whole area of gender, switching gender identity. And they could kind of just act out, dress all weird, and do all kinds of bizarre stuff. And the whole idea was, we just need to tolerate, everything is okay. You know, guys screw guys, girls have sex with girls, a guy can be a girl can be a guy, and the whole thing's cool, right? It's all cool because the state says it is, and if you don't like it, then you're a bully, or we can arrest you, right? And so that went on this week throughout the United States. Now, in about 3 weeks, we're going to be honoring Harvey Milk, who was a sexual predator, and he loved having sex with boys. And normally, you know, if I described a guy, a 33-year-old man who was liked to have sex with boys, you might think I was describing like Jerry Sandusky. Now, Jerry Sandusky, he was a football coach, or a coach of many kinds, but he worked for the Penn State, right? And he was an assistant coach there, and eventually was arrested as young men reported him having sex with them, molesting them through his nonprofit organization, and some even with the school. And so he ended up being convicted as a child molester, a serial rapist, and they put him in prison. He worked for Joe Paterno, one of the most famous coaches in United States history. It actually is a huge black mark on Paterno's life. But he was charged with involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, indecent assault, criminal intent to commit indecent assault, unlawful contact with minors, corruption of minors, endangering the welfare of children, right? You think somebody should go to jail for that? Well, he did. He is in jail. And he got, I think, anywhere from 30 to 60 years. But when it comes to California, we have a guy named Harvey Milk who was a homosexuality. He was jumped into homosexuality, just how a lot of young boys are. They get molested by older men. And Harvey Milk was molested repeatedly. And then he started hanging out at the opera where guys in the dark would molest young boys. And he used to go down there in New York. And so from a young age, he entered that lifestyle. And as he grew older, like a lot of older homosexual men, they lose their attractiveness, so they take advantage of young boys. And so Harvey used to take in young boys that had problems. A lot of them didn't have a dad in their life. And so in the autobiography about Harvey, he's open with Randy Schultz, who was a highly admired writer. He used to write for the Chronicle. He's now dead. He died from AIDS. So he wrote an autobiography of Harvey. It was Harvey asked him to write in other words, it was he was chosen to be Harvey's biographers, Harvey Milk, and he actually it was pretty out front, and he talked about him preferring to have sex with young boys. Now, I want you to just keep this in mind because this is the state of California we're talking about, who now has Harvey Milk Day, which this year is May 22. Obama created a postage stamp for Harvey Milk, and Secretary of the Navy Mabus picked a Navy ship and named it for Harvey Milk. Now, this is a guy that if he did what he did in Yuba County, Pat McGrath, the district attorney, would put him in prison. Harvey Milk's only claim to fame is that he was the first openly homosexual candidate to be elected to public office in the United States. His chief mission was to do away with the Judeo-Christian sexual ethic. So, for the progressives in California, they found a martyr in Harvey. Now, if you look up in the Webster Dictionary, the term pederast, it's a term we don't really use much. P-E-D-E-R-A-S-T, pederast, P-E-D-E-R-A-S-T. It's described as one who practices anal intercourse, especially with a boy. It defines statutory rape, that's a more common term, right, as the crime of having sex with someone who is younger than an age that is specified by law. Now, Harvey liked to have sex with younger boys under the age that's specified by law. That's 18 years of age. 18, you're good to go. The guy, kid's 18, you can have whatever sex now in California. Just pick a hole, right? You're good to go. So anyway, but Harvey Milk was both a pederast. In other words, he had sex, anal intercourse with boys. And he was a statutory rapist. So this is now, and it wasn't just this guy named, who's become famous, Jack Galen McKinley. He was a 16-year-old runaway boy who lacked a father in his life and had a drug problem. And Milk took him in, and he became Milk's boy. And eventually, after they parted, after Milk was killed, was murdered, shot by Randy White. Was it Randy White? I think it was Randy White, fellow supervisor. Jack Galen McKinley took his own life. And but McKinley wasn't the only guy Milk had sex with. Let me see. Let me read this to you. Explaining Milk's many flings and affairs with teenagers and young men, Randy Schultz writes how Milk told one lover why it was okay for him to also have multiple relationships simultaneously. Now, generally in a heterosexual society, if you're married, you do not have sex with other people. Usually people frown on that, right? That's a common value in Judeo-Christian ethic. Do people do that sometimes? Yep, they do. They violate that. But it's a generally held thing that people who marry or they have a monogamous relationship decide, I'm going to be faithful to you, right? But Milk's view was that not only did he not believe in heterosexual or having sex with the opposite sex, he thought that even being faithful to one person as a homosexual was ridiculous. He thought, hey, we don't buy into the heterosexual model, and we're not buying into the model where you stick with one person. He said we grow up with the heterosexual model, but we don't have to follow it, he said. We should be developing our own lifestyle. There's no reason why you can't love more than one person at the same time. So that was this is a guy that the perverts and La Raza that are running Sacramento for us in California, this is the type of person, they all voted on this, and they said, this guy is such an amazing quality character. We want our kids to look up to him. Now, if you read the Bible in the Old Testament, it was time and time again. Oh, we out of time? Anyway, I'll pick this up on the backside. We got an hour and a half to go. Don't quit. We're just getting warmed up. All right. Lou Benninger here. And we're at the halfway point. Again, I mentioned earlier, if you just came in at the halfway point, we pre-recorded this last night to allow us to not be here on Saturday because we couldn't. Wikiman and I have to be here at the same time to pull this off. So one of us is always on the loose, doing the wrong thing, going the wrong direction. It's like a married couple. One person's feeling good, the other person's got a headache. It's like a hard time here. So anyway, we're going to try to get it together in the future, hopefully. But anyway, if you want to call in, you can, but you can't chat with us. So, but this is a new program. It isn't a rehash. It isn't the worst of, the best of. It isn't anything of. We just did a new show. So that's what we're doing today. 742-5555. You want to file a complaint? The big kahuna, he's got big shoulders. He can handle it. 530-742-5555. And they call this place the Patriot, 1410 a.m. We're out here on Mount Huth, out here in eastern Yuba County, up in Northern California, called hopefully the state of Jefferson. So I was talking about Harvey Milk. He's famous, like Hollywood did a fictitious movie about him. Fictitious for you out there in Oliver's means it wasn't true. They called it Milk, right? Sean Penn played Harvey. Is just totally a crock of crap. And but then right after that, the legislature got behind. They need to honor this guy like he's a Martin Luther King, this guy of homosexuality. So another teen had contacted Harvey Milk. He was a teen with homosexual tendencies. This is a type of teen that the new law that California is wanting to pass, you could not try to help this teen because they said you will be forbidden to try to convince somebody to convert and leave the homosexual lifestyle. So this kid was named Gerard Dols, Gerard, Gerard Dols, Dols. And he was a kid that lived in, he lived back in another state. Can't see it now, Minnesota or something like that. Anyway, he contacted Milk, and he said he was having a tough time at home. And he was a physically disabled teen. And Milk encouraged him to run away from home. This is a teenager in 1977. To run away from, it's Minnesota. He's in Minnesota. And Milk, back then, 1977, you wrote letters. Did you know that? Some of you new people, young people, you don't know anything about writing a letter, but that's how you communicated. So people wrote a letter, then they wrote a letter back, like exchanging emails, but it just took longer and more effort, and it cost money. So this kid he said Harvey encouraged him to sneak out, run away from his Minnesota home, and where do you think he wanted to come? To San Francisco, because he wanted to be a good daddy like he was to his other partner, and he believed in have as many partners as you could have. And so Milk told Dols, who was a juvenile, don't tell your parents, and send him a letter with instructions on how to get out to San Francisco. However, the letter was intercepted by Dols' parents, who then filed a complaint with the Minnesota Attorney General's office. Nothing ever happened. Isn't that amazing? How things just get swept under the rug. When you get out here to California, they play by different rules out here. So Gerard Dols eventually, don't tell everybody because somebody might get arrested. He actually converted to be a Jesus freak and quit messing around with other boys, and actually was interviewed by Concerned Women for America, God forbid, good Christian ladies. And he told the whole story, how Dahl's parents interviewed Harvey Milk's letter. That letter is probably worth $50,000. It's a collector's item. Probably the Smithsonian Institute would want it. So the interesting thing is Milk was out there trolling for these young boys and just said, I will take you in. I will love you like a daddy. Just as long as you have a little of that Vaseline and bend over properly, we'll take care of business over here. So we have Harvey Milk Day, which is going to teach your kids over there in Marysville Unified School District and Yuba City Unified how to be sodomized and how a pervert, a pederast. Did you get that? Now, Jerry Sandusky, he went to prison back there working for Penn State having sex with little boys. But Harvey Milk, he got his picture. He got his picture in lights. He's got a movie made after him. You know, the sad thing about this is all these guys are all dead. Did you know that? Randy Shilts, who was a well-known and well-liked and good writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, well-beloved guy in the homosexual community, died of AIDS in the 1990s. And when you look at all these people, that first kid, the McKinley kid, he killed himself. And it's just a sad deal. But here we're forced. You know, it's one thing, if people want to have sex with a horse, there's laws for it and against it, I guess. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I guess if the horse is consenting, and the guy's consenting, who really gives a rip? But when your kids go to school, you're forced to pay taxes. They're forced to attend school by law. And they tell you that sex with a horse is all right, or sex with another guy of the same gender, person of the same gender, or that you might be, even though you got male plumbing, you may be a female in there. That is just evil. You know what I mean? And it just reminds me, because I read some of the Bible, it reminds me of so many accounts in the Bible where secular people that just were blinded to God forced godly people that they weren't perfect people. Godly just means they were trying to follow God. None of us are perfect. We're all sinners. But the secular people always want to force the people that don't follow that way to follow that way and say that way is just wonderful. Instead of like being tolerant, you can't just be tolerant of a person that wants to have sex with the same person or with a horse or a miniature donkey or a sheep. You actually got to say, oh, I think that's what God wants. And I think you're just wonderful for doing it that way. Now, that's what this is all about. So, anyway, Harvey, there are some blogs, in fact, I have them on my computer, that lists all his partners. It's unbelievable. Now, years ago, I can't even remember how this guy got a hold of me, but it was a tribal member from Oroville area, probably Maidu. And he got a hold of me. He was a fire jumper. And he had HIV. And he wanted to have lunch with me. And he had become a Christian. Now, he couldn't, under this new law, he could not do that. We could not lead him to Jesus and convert him out of the homosexual lifestyle. That would be against the law. But back then, this is about 10, 15 years ago, he had converted, but he was dying of AIDS. And he wanted to, I said, let's have lunch. So we had lunch. I said, tell me about your lifestyle. I said, how'd you get into it? And the whole thing. He was very open about it. And he said, he said, Lou, I was driven by lust. He said, and there are, homosexuals know that there are places in the community where people hook up. I said, well, tell me about that hookup part. He said, you don't really know the people. You just go in there, and if you find somebody that's eager, you just go have sex. That's it. It's just a straight, it's not like, oh, then we're going to have a relationship. He said, we just have sex, and then you go to the next person. So I said, well, how often did that happen? He said, for me, it was a few times a day. I thought, whoa. So I said, how many partners do you think you had? He said, oh, over 500. Well, that was an eye-opener for me. So when I read that Harvey Milk was just one guy after another guy. And he actually, in Randy Schultz's book, Randy Schultz is pretty open about Harvey's lifestyle. And Harvey talks about that not only did he think having sex with the same genders is good, but he thought the whole Judeo-Christian concept of being faithful to one person also needed to go by the wayside. So I'm not going to go into all his other people because I want to move on and talk about other things today. But what we have is a school system that is indoctrinating our youth to be deviant sexually. And it's crazy. And so what you need to do is decide, and then what they're trying to do is saying that they're trying to, as the years go by, they're trying to make it more and more difficult to be a homeschool parent. And you have to have a fire inspection. Oh, we have to have this permit. Oh, we have to pay a permit fee. And it's just going to be one thing after another because they want to force all children to be indoctrinated by a school system, just like the communists do. There's no alternative schools in communist countries. I go over there, and I've been there, so that's just the way that is. And because they have they want to teach you how they want you to think, and there's no flexibility like in the Constitution where you have a right to think and speak what you want. Under totalitarian government or a way of life, you don't have that right. It's called political correctness. You get that? You get that idea? Now, to give you just another little tidbit of perversion, Maine just voted because they got a lot of Somalis. They allowed them, Obama allowed a lot of Somali people. They come from Africa, Somalia. And a lot of those folks are Muslim. And so you've heard of genital mutilation, female genital mutilation, where the Muslims feel like a woman's vagina needs to be changed, right? Cut on, right? And so the Maine Democrats, the House Democrats, voted to allow that legally in their state. 77 votes to 70. They killed a ban on female genital mutilation. Now, I've never heard of that in the United States until we brought Muslims here. Now, you think, well, our country's made up by immigrants. You know something? The country was made up of immigrants that wanted to become Americans and behave like Americans and buy into a certain concept of how life should be, certain culture. What we have now is female genital mutilation is about Sharia law, that it's like young girls are forced to have that done. It isn't like, oh, should I circumcise my boy or not, or should I not circumcise him, right? That's not the same thing. This is forced upon young girls, right? And now we have American idiots in the legislature of Maine that are now endorsing Sharia law. And that's all I'm going to say about that because I got more stuff to talk about elsewhere. Now, let me go back up here. I wanted to, a friend of mine sent this, Dan Logue. He used to be assemblyman. He for 2 terms, and then they term out and they have to run for another office. He ran against John Garamendi and lost. But he sent this to me, and this is some of the accomplishments of this perverted group of people in California legislature that is just, I'm reading these to you not to depress you, but to motivate you to vote different people into office. So the Democrats who hold a majority down there, we got the 12-cent gas tax, right? Brown got everybody to vote for that down there, including some Republicans, saying that we don't have enough money for roads. The reason we don't have enough money to repair our roads and bridges and freeways is because the money that you pay for gas tax, by the way, the gas is going up. Did you notice that? And I'll give you a gas comparison here. The cheapest gas in both Yuba, Sutter County, is out on North Beale Road. It's 10, 15 cents cheaper out on North Beale Road. There's a couple of gas stations out there. Look up Gas Buddy and just put Linda, California, and you compare the gas, and they got the cheap gas out there. That's where I buy gas anyway, Linda. But anyway, they raised the gas tax. They lied to the public, saying there's no way that they have enough money to fix the roads. And Brown really doesn't want to fix the roads because he's hoping that you blow out some tires enough where you quit driving. But they also passed a cap and trade tax, which increased gas 63 to 93 cents a gallon, and the taxes that go along with it. In other words, you're just going to raise the price on gas plus taxes. So this says that before long we're going to be paying over $4 a gallon for gasoline in the state of California. Right now, you can get gas for a little over $2 in some other states like Arizona, Texas. So this gas tax not only affects how much you're paying for the fuel for your car, but the fuel for diesel trucks also went up like 20 cents and more. So everything you buy, lettuce, bread, can of peaches, whatever's trucked into your stores, clothing, anything that moves around, you go out to eat, it's going to cost more freight to move it. So also there's a proposed increase on a new tax on every residence for tap water. Did you know that? Now, Marysville, I don't know about you up in, I think Marysville and Oroville have the same outfit. We have California Water Service. They're a total ripoff. They're a private water company. They're one of the most successful utilities in the United States. I think they paid out dividends for like about 280 or 90 quarters in a row for their investors. They're a great company to invest in. It's a lousy company to buy water from because we're paying about 4 times as much for the same water, all regulated by the state of California. We're paying about 4 times as much in Marysville as those folks living in Yuba City, Olivehurst, Linda, all around the area. So now all of us in all these jurisdictions will pay a new tax on tap water. Why? You pay a tax on every single move you make. Now, there's also a $3.46 billion parks bond to pay for parks, not just in your community, but in disadvantaged communities. What's a disadvantaged community? That's a community where people are all on welfare, and they won't do anything for themselves. Do you know in my community, in my block, I'm the guy who picks up the garbage, right? There's people in the world that throw the garbage out, and there's people in the world that pick the garbage up, right? And so people throw junk every morning. I go out and pick the garbage up in front of my house. Now, yesterday, somebody threw a weed eater in my front yard. He stole it. So he got paranoid, so he threw it over the fence to hide it. I've had bicycles, weed eaters, Taco Bell stuff, all kinds of crap thrown up and down the street. So, but instead of having the disadvantaged community straighten up, I have to pay for this disadvantaged community. Why should I give a crap about them over there? They screwed it up. Let them fix it. The debt service alone on $3.46 billion is $200 million a year. You know, my dad and mom, they didn't go into debt, so we didn't have to. We didn't make a lot of money, but we didn't spend a lot of money on debt. Right? Interest doesn't buy you jack. So I tried to tell that to the city of Marysville. They don't get it. The city council. In fact, this last week, after being broke just a few months ago, and then they raised our taxes 1%. We're up to 8% in the city of Marysville for sales tax. They turned around and spent $12,000 of that to hire an expert to help them to goal set. Now, when they ran for office, these people said they were smart and said, if you'll let me to office, I can really help this city change itself around. And then they hired a gal and brought her in as as the administrator of the city, and she said, I'm really smart. I know all this information. I got a master's, or I got this, or I got that, and I know how to run a city, and I know how to that. But when it comes to I took there's a course you can take at Yuba College called, it's a speech class, small group speech or something like that. And they teach you how to coordinate a group and speak publicly. But the city council, after we spent all this time electing them, and then we hired this expert, Marty Brown, out of the 6 of them, they can't figure out how to have a meeting and actually pick out the top priorities. Like, should we paint all the building pink, or should we patch the roads? Should we, for instance, recently in a letter to the editor, Marty Brown, the new administrator, justified leasing 19 new police cars because it was going to cut down on maintenance. So, you know something? My dad said, Lou, don't borrow money, because then you got to pay all this interest and you don't actually get anything for interest. It just ends up, everything costs you more, right? So the legislature is going to spend, they go out and borrow $3.46 billion. This is just in California, not the United States, to put parks in disadvantaged communities. I've looked at parks in disadvantaged communities. You know what they look like? A piece of crap. There's needles all over them. It's just a big mess. So let me tell you about the disadvantaged communities. Now we have a law to release any lifer, murder, rape, child molestation, and etc., who is 60 years old. In other words, if I was in for rape right now in the California prison, I'm over 60. And if I'd spent 25 years in prison, then they could let me out, right? If I did 25 years and I'm over 60, so in other words, Charlie Manson, in just a few more months, could have been let out, but he died too quick because they say he didn't stay there long enough. Melendez brothers that murdered their parents, they'll be out in 12 years under this new law. This is a new law from these folks, all you liberals out there. This is your people down there doing some good work. A new $50 charge on all residents living in mobile home parks. So why would they charge you $50 for just living in a mobile home park? Well, it's to address the living condition enforcement in those parks. What's that mean? If you have to live in a mobile home, maybe that means you haven't got enough money to live in a regular house. Sounds like a tax on the poor to me, or retired people. A lot of retirement, there's a lot of mobile home parks a lot of retired people live in. They bought a mobile home, they rent a space or whatever. Did you know, I didn't look this up. I was going to look it up because I'm so old that when I grew up here, there used to be a few dinosaurs up around the Browns Valley area. And now the state of California has picked an official dinosaur for the state. So I think the bird is the quail, and I think the poppy is the flower. So now we're going to pick a particular dinosaur. I mean, these guys don't have enough time on their hand. Now, here's another thing. This law requires Tesla. This is like a law for a specific company, Tesla. Where the law tells them you either got to unionize with the United Auto Workers, or you're going to have to forfeit all the state incentives to buy electric cars. Now, it's like you get amazing incentives to buy these electric cars, but the state says if you go non-union, we're taking away all your incentives. Isn't that amazing? I mean, they could do that to solar companies. They could do that to anybody. You hear that music? That means I talked too long. We're going to take a break right now. And we got 1 more hour to go. All right, we're back. We got an hour left. I was talking about the compilation of some of the disaster decisions at the legislature, the last session. So I was talking about the fact that Tesla has a legislative gun to its head that if you don't hire United Auto Workers Union, you will have to give up your state incentives because the state is a union state. And that means ultimately anybody that wants to do business here is going to have to be union. That's the idea, right? Because you elected these people. They also, if you have AIDS or had AIDS before you died, if you gave it to an unknowing partner, it was a felony. Now they think, it's not such a big deal. We're just going to drop it to a misdemeanor. Forget about it. I don't know why they just don't eliminate it altogether. So if you think, I got AIDS, and if I tell them, then they're not going to have sex with me, so screw them, as they say. Then we're going to give preferential treatment to prisoners convicted of serious crimes if they were under the age of 25 because their brains were not mature enough to understand right and wrong. We got that one going. You wonder why we got more and more crime in California. Hold that because you're not holding them behind the bars. Now on driver's license, if the officer cannot sort out your gender by looking at you, he's not going to be able to tell by your driver's license. Is it a boy or is it a girl? We can't tell because we just can't tell by the license. So when they say, is it a male or a female, black male adult, or Hispanic male adult, or white male adult, we're going to have to leave out that middle part. Also, we've now passed legislation to offer and to provide free legal services for people here illegally. Just thought you'd like to know your taxes are being spent. And we're establishing safe injection zones run by the government to oversee people shooting heroin. Just thought you'd like to know that. So those are just some of the high points of the incredible accomplishments. They failed on a couple things. They failed, like I mentioned, on the homeschool bill. So they got a few things to work on next time to kind of do a redo. I wanted to mention that for all of you that had to evacuate, it's been a little over a year since we evacuated because of the threat of Oroville Dam collapse. You remember that? And so James Gallagher, the assemblyman for our area here in Yuba Sutter counties, he's been working on a bill with some other folks to take the operations and maintenance of the dams from the Department of Water Resources and give it to a new commission. They're going to expand government because government's not big enough. So even though we have too many people working for Caltrans, we're going to have a new commission, and Department of Water Resources would just be in charge of inspecting and assuring the safety of the dams because it was a conflict of interest, right? So that is a new thing, and I think that's probably a good idea. I just hate the idea of the government expanding. Now, you remember we've passed 2 or 3 water bonds with the hope of getting more water resources, or we call those dams, so we can manage the water, hold the water back, save some of it up for a rainy day. Same concept you have with a savings account, knowing that if we're making good money right now, we may not always make good money, so we'll save a little bit to cover us through a skinny spot. But Governor Brown doesn't want to do that. He just wants to let it run to the ocean, just like when the Indians ran the state of California, the California Indian tribes. And however, the Donald Trump administration and Congress are pushing ahead with a plan to raise Oroville Dam. Now, that's been one of the ideas, was to, instead of building a new dam, just add, I think, 18 feet or so on top of Oroville Dam. and make it hold back more water, right? And so I didn't realize that was actually a federal project. It wasn't just a California project. So Congress and Trump is going to work on adding, it's 602 feet, the fourth tallest dam in California. It's the cornerstone of the federal, I didn't understand this, it's federal Central Valley Project, which provides water to cities and farms throughout the state. Now, Governor Brown's vision is to cut off water, which he already has, to the Central Valley farmers along I-5. And a lot of those farmers have gone out of business. They've shoved out their trees. And instead, Brown has, now the property wasn't worth what it was because it now isn't producing anything and it has no water. So now the next thing is to sell that property to solar companies. Now, you remember solar companies, we've talked about it many times. There's no profit in solar. But, in a communist or socialist state or country, there's no point in profits. They just simply decide what they want to do and take the money away from you and me and do it. So they're going to sell the property. They're going to make it so the farmers sell their property to major solar companies that cover the land with reflective solar panels, and then they'll force them to sell they'll force PG&E and other companies that provide power, like San Diego, Edison, and they will force them to buy the solar power to provide for us instead of fossil fuel power or hydroelectric power. And then we will have to pay higher prices, and we will pay tax subsidies to the solar companies. Now, the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress want to raise the dam 18 and a half feet, which would get us up to 620 and a half feet. And the Westlands Water District wants to do that as well. They want that water. They would be glad to have that water down there. So, anyway, it's interesting. I had never heard this before, that the Trump administration could actually maybe pull this off. Now, a lot of the local people, tribal people, like the tribal people don't want any more of their, like the way I look at it, where my people are buried, if they covered it with water, I wouldn't give a rip because they're not there, right? It's just their leftovers. But the Native Americans have different views of that, and they don't like the idea of their burial places being covered with water. So they're going to fight that, along with people like the Sierra Club and their other, these environmental groups are these left-wing groups, right? They're left-wing. So anyway, there's going to be a fight over this, but I thought it was fascinating because we can't get anybody in the state of California, these Democrats, interested in water storage. But at the federal level, there is some interest, and people like Dianne Feinstein are interested in it as well. Liberal Dianne Feinstein. Even though her former colleague, Barbara Boxer, she was against it. But we'll see how it turns out. Now, back to Gallagher felt it was a conflict of interest for the Department of Water Resources to be in charge of the operation of these facilities and the inspection of these facilities. And it's not, I agree with it. It's a problem. And one reason you can see it's a problem is the inspections didn't get any work done. How did we end up with a dam that actually is falling apart, holding back hundreds of thousands of feet of water? That's incredible, isn't it? Well, everybody else kind of thought it was incredible as well. So I want to talk about another conflict of interest, and it's Butte County fussed around and passed a law to forbid selling any of the water that comes through Butte County to Southern California. Yuba County, years ago, Yuba County residents paid or paid and put up their property. Yuba County residents voted to put up their property as collateral to build Bullards Bar Dam because the 1955 flood scared the hell out of everybody here. And it drowned a bunch of people, drowned a bunch of animals, drowned people, ruined businesses. And finally, people in Yuba County, where Yuba River comes through, and Sutter County, Feather and Yuba come on each side of Yuba County, come through Yuba County. They said, we need to do something about this Yuba River. And so they said, we're gonna go for broke. And they laid their lives on the line, and they launched this new Bullards Bar Dam. And as I mentioned before, this dam was for water conservation, to stop flooding, to provide more water for farmers, and to refill the aquifers underneath the ground. And I don't think the thought then was to sell water, but it was all the power income was to go to PG&E for 50 years to pay off the bonds so we'd be debt-free and have a dam. Isn't that great? Sounds great, huh? So the 50 years come and go. And so now the Yuba County Water Agency, which was the agency as a part of this county of Yuba, was just a department of the county of Yuba to work with PG&E while all these bonds are being paid off and to run affairs at the dam. And so when PG&E got done, they turned everything over to Yuba County, and that fell under Yuba County Water Agency. And in the meantime, even while PG&E had it, Yuba County worked out a way to sell some of that water to these folks that really needed water down in these districts in Southern California. And so we'd share the water, and that came out of a 1991 threat of the Department of Water Resources that said, if you don't, we're not going to allow the state to run out of water in Southern California. So I think what we're going to do is just suspend all water rights, and we're just going to decide who gets water from down here in Sacramento. And people got together and say, listen, we'll share. You know, it's kind of like where your kid won't share the toy and said, if you're not going to share the toy, we're going to take all the toys away. And we'll determine who plays with what toy when. So the Department of Water Resources and the folks up here made a decision that we would share the water and be benefited by some cash to help us up here with it. Excess water. Not water we couldn't do without, but water that was excess. So water sales began to happen. Now, the only way that those water sales could have happened was because of the Bullards Bar Dam being financed by the people of Yuba County, not by a handful of farmers, not by a handful of directors, but by the people of Yuba County. The dam was funded by the people of Yuba County, and that control of that water and the management of that water made it possible to sell some of that water, which didn't run off into the ocean, and to pass it on down to Southern California. So when all the money, all the responsibility of the dam came back to Yuba County here about a year or so ago, then all the water sales money and all the power sales money are going to be managed by the Yuba County Water Agency. Now, the problem is that the Yuba County Water Agency is just like the Department of Water Resources. They have a conflict of interest because we have two things going on. We have the same supervisors that manage the budget for the county of Yuba over here managing a water business and a power business. And instead of having an arm's length relationship with different people overseeing the water agency and different people overseeing the county budget, they got their fists in both pots of money. The other thing that's a conflict of interest is we have these guys, or I say guys, they're entities, these what we call pumpers. They're farmers or people that own property that are farms, and they can pump water out of the ground to their heart's desire, and they can water their crops, but they cannot sell that water anywhere. You cannot, in the state of California, pump water from under your ground. You can use it on your crops, but you do not have a right to sell it all over the country. So the water agency said, listen, the water agency had all this river water that's cheaper than water coming out of the ground, so the farmers were buying river water, and because they don't have to pump it in the same fashion, right? No utility bills. But the water agency said, hey, these guys in Southern California want this river water, which has been stored. So if you'll pump your water, we'll pay for the cost of that, plus give you a profit. It started out okay. They made a little money, and the county, the Yuba County Water Agency, made money as well, right? So, but they started out selling water for about $115 an acre foot, but now it can get up to $400, $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 an acre foot. We're talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about one pump generating $160,000 a month for a farmer. And some of these farmers and some of these directors who are like these supervisors and directors who are funded in their political campaigns by the farmers, pumpers, they say, oh, well, it's their property rights. But they can't explain it after then. They get tongue-tied. They say it's property rights. But there's no property rights written into law that says anybody that lives in the valley here has property rights to water that's sitting up behind Bullards Bar Dam. That would be the right. The people that own that are the people of Yuba County, not 100 farmers, not Kurt Aiken, who talks like he owns it. He talks like the water agency owns Bullards Bar Dam. The water agency doesn't own jack diddly. The people of the county of Yuba owned it. And the supervisors don't own anything either. They just are stewards of the citizens of Yuba County. Now, maybe they think they're stupid, and maybe they think those 5 supervisors plus 2 ad hoc members or at-large members, those 7 people, maybe they think they're the smartest people in the county. Well, maybe not. The fact is they don't have a right to make decisions to benefit a handful of their friends. That's what this is coming down to. Now, there's an article, I'm not quite sure who wrote this, but it's sent to me. It's called The Hijacked Initiative. And maybe it's going to go in the Territorial Dispatch. The Groundwater Fairness Act says the Yuba County Clerk Recorder Terry Hansen has been in office for 16 years. One of her duties is to process initiatives. She's a professional that knows what the law says. I'm skimming through this. Her office must and always has been fair and impartial. The committee that put together the Groundwater Fairness Act took their initiative to the clerk recorder for the title and summary, which is the first step in the initiative process. In other words, if you want to change something in the county and the county supervisors or the city council is not paying attention to you, you can put something on the ballot yourself. Did you know that? And the clerk recorder does not have a right to keep it off the ballot, but the clerk recorder just puts a title on it and a summary, and then the people decide whether that's going to be approved or not. And then after that, if somebody wants to take it to court and say, no, that's violating the Constitution, then that's when you fight that fight. But the clerk reviewed this initiative. She processed the initiative, returned it to the committee to gather signatures on a petition. And after they gathered all the signatures and returned to the clerk for placement on the ballot, then the Yuba County Water Agency challenged the right of the clerk to okay the initiative. And the clerk yielded to the water agency. The water agency never has done a title and summary in their life, and they drugged their foot, and their attorneys said, oh, well, we don't like that. We don't like this initiative. The fact is the Constitution of California says the water agency has no right, or the county clerk has no right, to pick and choose which initiatives go on the ballot. All they can do, or the Secretary of State or the Attorney General at the state level, all they can do is put a title and a summary on it, even if it said, we hate black people. And then you fight it out later, even though it's a racist argument. In other words, the people have a constitutional right. It's a government of the people, for the people, by the people. It's not of the water agency, for the water agency, by the water agency, of the directors, for the directors, by the directors, or the pumpers. A pumper the other day, or a farmer out there, said that he believed that the water behind Bullards Bar Dam was owned by the farmers. Well, that's a bunch of crap. They may be a nice guy and stuff, but it's a crock of crap. That water is under the jurisdiction of the people. If it isn't under the jurisdiction of the people of Yuba County, then it's the state's water. And the state would love that. So this writer says that the Yuba County Water Agency hijacked the initiative. They did. They illegally blockaded that initiative. Why did they do that? Because you know something? They were afraid. They're afraid of the people of Yuba County because they've been self-dealing that money. Now it's up to like $50 million a year. And now they're just picking and choosing what little projects they want to do around the county instead of listening to the people. Instead of the people of the county benefiting by the revenues coming, like reducing the PG&E bills, for instance, or even reducing the water bills. So they took the Yuba County Water Agency, that's 7 people plus a director, took the process away from the professional Yuba County Clerk Recorder's Office. That's her business to do that, who had already approved the initiative to put on the ballot. And when they resubmitted the initiative to the Yuba County Water Agency, they just said, no, we're going to deny it. 7-0. So they broke the law, the Yuba County Water Agency. 1, by denying the voters the right to the initiative process. The voters in the state or the city or the county have a right to put stuff on the ballot. And it doesn't have to go through the permission of a water agency. It's totally nuts. The Supreme Court set a precedent in 1978, said it is not their function, like an agency's function or even a clerk's function, a county clerk, to determine if an initiative will be valid or is good or whatever. Only a court can make that determination. Additionally, the water agency, because of their close connection to the farmer pumpers, are a biased participator and have a conflict of interest. That's just the way it is. And so 2 of the guys that voted for that, it was a 7-0 vote. Now, 4 of those 7 are since that vote, 4 of the 7 are new agents. People voted those people out, voted a bunch of people out over this. 2 of the guys that are left are Randy Fletcher and Andy Vasquez that are still running, that are now running for office in this current election coming up here in June. And they are still supporting the idea that the people don't have a right to the benefits of that water or that power, and that the pumpers should be making $160,000 a month off something they never even made. No pumpers claiming that they created that water. It's God's water. I mean, in the sense that where does water come from, right? They didn't grow something like rice. It's like who owns the air? Who owns the sunlight? It's amazing. Pumpers say, "Oh, we own that water," and some of them weren't even probably born when that dam was created. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to try to land this plane here in a few minutes, and after we finish, if you want to hang around there at noon, there's some guys coming on here talking sports, and there's a lot of cool sports going on right now if you're interested in who's getting drafted for football or the basketball playoffs or even baseball. It's incredible. So I wanted to talk for a few minutes about tariffs, and to listen to the Never Trumpers, the Republican Never Trumpers, like Ben Sasse or Ben Sass, however you pronounce it, from Nebraska, who's from a big farm state. He's sounding like we have free trade and that our farm products are welcomed overseas and we don't have tariffs. He's a liar and fraud, and all these people talking about Trump. Remember, Trump said, we're going to make countries deal fairly with the United States. So he wants to renegotiate these trade agreements, right? So everybody says, well, Trump's just going to start a trade war. We have always been in a trade war. And let me give you some facts that I think will really sober you on how we do business with when our businesses do business with businesses in other countries, okay? So whether you're in the farming business or you're in the, some of my friends are shipping farm equipment, cars, trucks, all kinds of products, right? So tariffs, you remember we had a problem with tariffs when we first started this country, and remember the Boston Tea Party? And that's when a group of people that got fed up with England charging tariff on tea, they just went and said, hey, forget you, and they threw the tea into the bay. And because they don't want to pay the tariff on the tea, and it went a little bit more complicated than that, but there were tariffs clear back then, right? So according to United States International Trade Commission, you can look this up. There's websites that list all this. They're very complicated. In fact, I ship stuff to Cambodia, and every once in a while the freight forwarders will say, oh, what's the shipping code on this? I said, I don't have time to look at it. You guys do it. You look at it. It's complicated looking at all these federal websites. United States International Trade Commission imposes a 20% tariff on dairy products from other nations. That means somebody wants to ship us milk, cheese, whatever, yogurt. We charge whatever they're going to sell it to me, maybe if I'm an importer, there's a 20% tax on top of whatever they're charging me, right? You get that? Same for most vegetables, 20% tariff coming into this country. We say, oh, I didn't know we charged tariffs. Well, I'm going to get to the rest later, the other end of it. But asparagus and sweet corn are held in higher esteem, enjoying tariffs of 21.3%. You ever buy asparagus at the store, you might look and see where it comes from. If it came from out of the country, somebody had to pay an extra 20%, 21% tax just to get it to the store if you bought it over here at the local market. Apricots, cantaloupe, and dates have tariffs. I just bought some dates the other day. I love dates. They're high in potassium, have great fiber. 30% tariff if they're coming from out of the country. Okay? Well, canned tuna, you like canned tuna? I love tuna fish sandwiches. The tariff is 35% if that canned tuna isn't caught and packaged in the United States. Peanuts, shelled and unshelled, 132% tariffs and 163% share. Shelled, 163% tariff. That means on top of the price that I'm buying the peanuts for, somebody's going to pay 163% more just to get them into the country. Is that unbelievable? Let me help you with this. Ben Sasse talks as if Trump is creating all these tariffs. He's so full of crap. I get sick of that guy. I thought when he ran, I thought he was going to be a decent guy. He's so full. He's a liar. United States International Trade Commission, that's a federal government commission. They list more than 12,000 tariffs on imports to America, covering the mundane to the arcane. If you want a live fox, you can get one. You're going to have to pay 4.8% more for an imported live fox than a domestic one. I mean, it just goes on and on. How about tobacco? You like to smoke? When I go to Vietnam, I can go over and buy the same cigarettes I can buy here. I don't know what the cigarettes say. Do you smoke, Mike? Mike, he doesn't smoke. Is it $5, $8? I don't know what's it cost in California. You have it, guys? Nobody's smoking out here tonight. Anyway, all you smokers out there, whatever it is, I can go to Vietnam. If I fly to Vietnam in the morning, in about 20 hours, by the time I get there, I could buy a pack of cigarettes for 90 cents. Now, I'm going to tell you something right now. Here's the deal is, if I want to bring tobacco into this country, I'm going to have to pay a 350% tariff, right? So if I'm paying $1 over there for those packs, it's going to get the price up to $4 or $5 a pack, right? For that, and I haven't even sold them. I haven't moved them across the country just to bring them through the border of the United States. It's a 350% tariff on imported tobacco. You got it? Now, what Trump's saying, that Trump's not even arguing about that. What Trump's arguing about is that our products go in the other direction. we're getting jacked around on some of our products, or the products, they won't even let us bring the product over there. Like, for instance, when I was in Hong Kong, if you live in Hong Kong and you want to import a brand new vehicle from the United States, say the car costs $50,000 new. I think, is that a new car? Is that a reasonable price for a new car? Not so much, $50,000. So say I'm moving to Hong Kong. I'm going to be working over there, and I want to bring a new car. And it costs $50,000. I buy it here. Do you know how much it's going to cost me to bring it into Hong Kong? $50,000. The same price. They're going to double the price. I got to pay the Hong Kong government $50,000 plus pay the U.S. company $50,000. So that's where it gets rough, And part of the reason in Hong Kong, they don't want any more cars in Hong Kong. They can't. They're eliminated, right? I mean, they're limited on the amount of space they have even to park those things. So there's reasons why people have these tariffs, but the other thing is these governments supplement some of these companies in other countries so they're more competitive with us in our country. So the government will give them money over there. So it's not like we're not charging tariffs in this country. Now, this is an amazing thing. It says the title of this article, if U.S. sugar tariffs make Americans poorer, then Donald Trump's tariffs will make Americans what? Right? So it's interesting. I've followed this U.S. sugar industry for many years. I just got fascinated in it. The United States is the 5th largest sugar producer and the 5th largest sugar consumer of sugar in the world. Pretty interesting, huh? Because there's 220-something nations in the world. The U.S. sugar industry has enjoyed trade protection. How long do you think we've been getting trade protection on sugar? Since 1789. You think those sugar farmers, those beet farmers and sugarcane farmers haven't got those paid off, those politicians paid off? Since 1789, Congress enacted the first tariff against foreign-produced sugar. That means you want to Cuba? That's what we screwed Cuba over. We won't buy their sugar, right? We got an embargo on Cuban sugar. They're just 90 miles away. They could have that sugar over here in a couple hours, right? So since then, U.S. government has continued to provide trade support and protection for the domestic sugar industry. So it's called the Farm Bill, enacted in 1990. It protects the U.S. sugar program. It's a bill for setting U.S. sugar policy, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds on this. So, let me tell you the impact. In a fiscal year in 2013, Americans consumed 12 million tons of refined sugar. No wonder we got diabetes. With the average price of raw sugar at 6 cents per pound higher than the average world price. In other words, we're paying 6 cents a pound for raw sugar more than the world price. That means, based on 24 billion pounds of refined sugar at 6 cents per pound premium, we're paying extra 6 cents per pound, 24 billion pounds. Americans paid an extra $1.4 billion extra for sugar just because of tariffs. Because we're paying a higher price. Just because they block the farmers here want more money for their sugar products, sugar cane, sugar beets. So that's the equivalent to more than $310,000 per sugar farm in the United States. So each farmer's making an extra $310,000 on his product, right? This is such a cool article. I love it when they break it down. So it's just when I have people on my block that don't work. They're a lot healthier and younger than me, and they are living off me because I pay taxes, and they sit over there and watch me work, and they collect the money, right, and get the freebies from welfare and all that kind of stuff, and then do drugs. And this guy says we can regard this as a transfer of money from one group of Americans to another. And perhaps sugar farmers are such righteous beings that we should be forced to pay them more money than what we could buy just across the border. So, anyway, So if you hear this talk about tariffs, it's really a bunch of baloney. It's pretty complicated, actually. But the fact is that what Donald Trump is saying is let me look at this. Okay, Trump has suggested a 45% tax on imports from China and a 35% on goods from Mexico. So we'll see whether, a lot of this is posturing. But the fact is, what Trump's saying is in these negotiations, Obama and Bush before him are lousy negotiators, and we have the people of like a lot of people say, well, we don't want to jerk China around because we're getting a lot of cheap goods from China. Well, what Trump's saying is we want them to buy our products, right? We want them, if they put really, really, really high tariffs on our products, then not as many of our product will be sold to China and these other countries. So when I was in Beijing a few years ago, I was in a store and I saw some Sunsweet prunes in the store in Beijing, China. I thought, well, way to go. Because my friend, Sabrina, she actually has been over there and negotiated and marketed and made deals somehow. And so we got some prunes going over there because maybe they want our prunes. And a lot of our walnuts have been, my friend Jeff Stevens with Stevens Farmhouse. They got the best pies in the area. If you want a pie, just don't eat too many of them. But he sells walnuts to Turkey and to China. So it means a lot to farmers. But I saw a couple farmer comments in the paper the other day, and they said, listen, we're more concerned not just with our product, but with the overall well-being of the United States. I thought, oh, that's a pretty balanced look at it. So anyway, the next time you hear these people talk about, they talk as if there's no tariffs, just think, come on, man. Look up that website, that 12,000 tariff website called United States International Trade Commissions. Now, I know some of this because I ship 2 to 3 containers a month of humanitarian goods to Cambodia. And I know just a little bit about it. And so, but it's complicated. And we impose a lot of tariffs on stuff coming into this country. So, I wanted to mention a couple things before we get down to the last minute here. You've heard a couple really cool commercials. I thought, Leslie, you outdid yourself on that commercial. There's a cool deal coming up. If you like entertainment and you like to eat, you like live entertainment like a play, and you like to eat, the Creative Light Theater, which operates out of the Church of Glad Tidings, but it has actresses from all over the community, and they create these let's see, I can't think of the word I want to use. They write their own plays and they write their own music, the original plays, original music for almost all of them, and they're very fun. And it's in a nice theater that we built out there years ago. It's called the Embassy Theater at Highway 99 Eagle Road. So you heard the advertisement maybe, and they're going to present a play called Job, J-O-B, not Job. It's the Bible story of Job, but it's in modern times. It's pretty cool. And the fun thing is you don't have to drive to Sacramento or drive to Reno to catch this. It's they're selling $22 per ticket if you and your partner want to come, or $200 for a table of 10, and you get a 3-course meal? 3-course meal and a 3-act play, plus raffle prizes. They'll probably have some things you can win. And so it's May 20th through the 25th, 6:30 at night. So it'll run about 6:30 to 9:30 at night. And you get a nice meal. It'll be cooked right there. It's not some it's not like some cafeteria meal. It'll be a nice served meal. I don't know what the actual food is, but I've been to them. They're good, and it'll be fun. And the acting is great, music's great. So you ought to get in on it. And usually the money is going to a good cause. So sometimes it's to send a bunch of young people to a foreign country and help people out. But this time it's to do a lot of needed maintenance out there on the property, on the buildings. So we do a lot of work. You hear all this stuff. Oh, we need to help the homeless. We need to help people coming out of prison. We need to do this. Well, they do a lot of that out there. In fact, we have a lot of people living out there that were once locked up or once without a home, and now they're getting on their feet. They're having a good experience, and so this money is going towards shoring up some of the buildings. We wear things out there. So if you want to get involved in that, call Glad Tidings at 671-3160. That's 530. So if you're in Oroville or nearby Nevada City, you want to catch a really good play. I'm not talking hokey here. These plays, we got good plays here. We got Yuba College does plays, the acting company does plays, Faith Christian School does plays. A lot of good actors around here, and this is top notch here. And so if you want to get in on, have a good time and help a good cause, 530-671-3160. And the play is called Job. So I also want to give a shout out again to the Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots. And let's see if I can find it here. And so we got the, let's see. Let me see if I can pull this up and tell you exactly how it is. So we have this coming Monday night, May 7th, or about a week away, May 7th. We have the Sutter County Superintendent of Schools race, which is competitive. I mean, we got 3 different candidates, and they're going to be at this meeting May 7th, Sutter Buttes Tea Party, at Church of Glad Tidings, Building 200 at 6:30, and you're going to hear from them, tell their story about why they should be the superintendent of schools. We'll have the incumbent plus 2 other competitors, and then it'll be cool if Francisco Ravelis is there. He is now the superintendent of the Yuba County Office of Education, just across the river from Yuba City. And he doesn't have any competition, but he may be there, and he's a sharp guy and very inspirational guy. So come out, and it starts at 6:30, and you can. It's important. This is an important position in the community. Then in the 21st of May, which is the 3rd Monday night of the month, we're going to have the district attorney's office race. That's Amanda Hopper, who's the incumbent, running against Chris Carlos, who used to work for the office and now is a defense attorney. So they are going to be there. Now, there's no competition over on the Yuba County side, so I don't know that Clint Curry will actually come or not to that, but he's unopposed. But both of those meetings should be very interesting, and I encourage you to come. Watch the paper. There are many forums. Some are put on by veterans. Some are put on by, Republicans, and some put on by Democrats. But whoever they're being put on by, thank God for it, because it's a great opportunity to meet your candidate, and some of them are being live streamed. So you can actually get in on some of that. So also, if you're having problems with your business, if you're having vandalism or people are camping out on your business and it's just difficult, or people are, they're just panhandling, causing trouble, spreading garbage, getting into your garbage, creating a problem, Universal Security can solve it. Now, I told you earlier that somebody dumped a weed eater in my yard. I had a bicycle left near my property, and I called the police, and they said, "Oh, it's just found property. We're not interested." I thought, really? It's a stolen. Somebody owns this bike. He said, "No, it's actually on private property, so it's not our business." I thought, unbelievable. So, I thought somebody lost a really nice mountain bike, and they were stashing it between my house and the apartments. And so I said, okay, I'll get rid of it. I'll give it to somebody that needs it because I don't know who belongs to it. So anyway, Elite Security will solve your problem. They handle Yuba County Courthouse security. Yeah, they checked me over pretty good today. I was going in there to meet with the sheriff, the captain of the jail. So 749-0280 and get yourself some security. We're going out now, so stay tuned for the sports thing, and we'll be back next week. Maybe we'll actually do a live program. Are you coming back live? Maybe. He said, I don't know. Mike's, he's have a poker face. He's not committing either way, but Santos, he doesn't know what he's doing. All right, we'll see you next week.